Hi everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to continue our journey further into AP Physics. And like I said in my last video, before doing anything in the very first chapter of AP Physics, which is kinematics, we need to understand some basic concepts. So in today's video, we're going to be continuing to look at some new concepts that we may or may not have heard of before and see how they what they actually mean in the physics field. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Alright, and I'm sure you have probably already seen from the title. Today we're going to be focusing on two main concepts, which are speed and velocity, which these two should not be confused with each other at all. And today we're going to be looking at both of them. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Let me just get this iPad started. Okay, perfect. So first off is speed. Okay, now speed is a word that we often use in our daily lives. So what exactly does speed mean? Speed is nothing but the rate at which a given distance is covered. Rate at which a given distance is covered. Okay? A fairly simple definition. And if we want to calculate speed, how do we do that? Well, if we just look at the definition here, we can easily find a mathematical relationship, right? So, speed is calculated as speed equals the distance divided by the time, okay? I abbreviated all three of those. This is usually how you'll find most people write the equation, okay? Now, what exactly are the units for speed? Now, what I want to point out is it may vary depending on what your unit for distance, so what your unit for distance and what your unit for time are, right? But you will see usually that distance is measured in meters, okay? And you'll see that time is usually measured in seconds. So that makes the unit for speed meters per second, okay? And I'm sure when you're in the car or you're driving on the road, you always see the speed limit, right, written on a little board. And let's say that you're driving and you see that the speed limit is 60 miles per hour, okay? So if you look here, we only have the magnitude, right? So the speed actually only gives us the magnitude as in the numerical value. And from our previous video, we know that any quantity that gives us just a numerical value is a scalar quantity, okay? Therefore, speed is a scalar quantity, okay? Fairly easy, fairly simple. We all know about this, okay? Now let's move on to velocity, maybe something we might not have heard of before, but I think all of you might have definitely heard of it. Let's see what exactly velocity means, okay? So velocity is the change in position. It's a change in position over time. Change in position over time, okay? And this statement right here, the change in position, should ring a bell because that's from our last video where we talked about how the change in position is nothing but our displacement, right? Change in position is our displacement. Therefore, to calculate velocity is equal to change in position divided by time, okay? And we can also find the units for velocity using this equation right here. So we'll see that displacement is usually measured in meters, right? And time is usually measured in seconds. So velocity ends up being, the units for velocity end up being meters per second. Now, like I said, depending on what units you're using for your displacement and time, this may vary, okay? But as you can see, this is the same unit as we had for time, or speed over here, okay? One more, the most important thing that I like to point out is that velocity has direction, okay? The reason being that if you see over here the equation of velocity, you'll see that in the numerator we have displacement, okay? And displacement is a vector quantity, so it has both direction and the magnitude. So it is directly influencing the velocity because it's in the numerator, right? So it has a direct effect on the velocity. Therefore, velocity also has magnitude and it also has direction. So what does that mean? That means that velocity is a vector quantity because it has both magnitude and direction. Now, to understand this better, let's take an example, okay? Let's take an example. Let's say that we're here at point X and then we go 70 miles per hour to the east here to point Y, and then from point Y we go 10 miles per hour to the north to point Z. Okay, let me write this down. So let's say this was 30 miles per hour to the east. This is 10 miles per hour to the north. Okay, and the difference I hope you can see between this and what we saw over here is that over here we only had the magnitude, we only have the numerical value, right? But if we look over here, we have this numerical value plus the direction, numerical value plus direction, okay? And if we ignore this, right, and we just look at the magnitude, then this is the speed, okay? But when we have both the magnitude and the direction, this is the velocity, alright? And it is a vector quantity, okay? So, like I said, fairly simple, really easy, very easy to understand. So that was everything about speed and velocity, and I hope you understood these two because they're very, very, very important in to understand before we go forward in our journey for AP Physics. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I will get to them as soon as possible and try my best to answer them. And I hope to see you in my next video. Goodbye!